Hey, is that fun or what? That is really cool. Sorry if your name doesn't begin with a J sound. You'd be up here with us, but that's all we're allowing on the platform for this particular panel conversation. And it is a conversation about disruption, the opportunity to maybe recognize, use your language, Jeremy, we live in an upside-down kingdom, so maybe sometimes we need to try some upside-down ways to advance God's work through that kingdom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and facilitate and keep these J guys in some kind of orderly manner, just so you can hear some of their stories, some of the ways in which they and their teams have leaned into, prayed into, and actually acted on opportunities to try the next new thing, to be a bit gutsy, bold even, as Jeremy just shared what Tyndale's doing, and not be afraid. To not be afraid of the unknown, the uncertain, and the untrod, and to see how God would honor and bless that as He lead them. So you're going to hear some stories. I'm going to try and draw them out. If I feel like there's more they can tell, I'm going to push on them a bit, so get ready. We'll start with this J over here, Mr. Geof Morin, whose name is very close to mine, but he's way smarter and better looking, as you can tell. Geof Morin works with YouVersion. You all know YouVersion, the remarkable Bible app. And there was an important first disruption, Geof, in kind of the launching of this entity. Some know the story, but some don't. Just give us a peek back from the very beginnings of YouVersion.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I think it's important to remember is that the Bible wasn't the first thing that we gave away. Because the Bible app, the thought came to our founder, Bobby Grunwald's mind in 2007. But you need to go back another year to 2006 when Life Church, which is the organization under which YouVersion is a part, Life Church was a multi-site church in the U.S. We now have 44 campuses, but back then we had probably 8 or 9, maybe 10, spread through a couple states. And we had grown really quickly in a couple years to have purchased some land and built some buildings, and we were really kind of living paycheck to paycheck, you might say, at that point, where our indebtedness was the highest and our resources were the lowest. Because we were doing a multi-site strategy, we were taking the kids' curriculum and the youth curriculum and the stuff that we did on the worship on Sundays, packaged it up and distributed it to each of those campuses so they could then run the weekend experience for families that were a part of our church, which meant then that was actually a perfect setup to be able to take those ministry resources. And we had been approached by publishers from around the country to say, hey, why don't you take those resources, we'll sell them, generate revenue for your ministry. And that was going to be really attractive at that moment because of the cash flow crunch we were in at that point in time. And as Pastor Craig and Bobby and our leaders were considering that, it was one of those moments where they felt, yeah, they could do that, and they could see kingdom impact as a result through what our church could do through growth. But in that moment, God was speaking them to give it away instead of to sell it. And so the first thing we gave away was what we had, which was our church's resources. And in counting the cost, they kind of heard and understood projections from the publishing companies about what revenue it might generate over the course of the first year. And yet it was a decision that God was leading us to give it away. So they made a decision inside of a closed-door room on a Wednesday, didn't tell anyone about it, committed to the Lord that we would give it away. And that weekend, when we came into church, over and above the average giving was that amount of money that was promised to us in the first year.
Nice.
And it was proof that when we trust God and obey, what seems like we were looking out the windshield of our ministry's lives that seems like disruptive innovation, when we look at the rearview mirror, what we really see, it was obedience to the promptings of God. And that was kind of the first thing that we gave away. Yeah. Then the next year when the idea came for a Bible app, or, Bobby was actually looking for disruptive innovation in his own spiritual life of how could he engage with the Bible more using this background of technology that he had. And so when the Bible app idea came along and we began to work with ministry partners even in this room to make it possible, it was a no-brainer that this had to be something that we gave away. Our own pastor came to faith when Gideon gave him a free Bible walking across the college campus. And we looked into the future and saw young people engaging in technology. At that point in time, they're not paying 99 cents for a song that they love Why would they pay 99 cents for a book that they don't even know that they believe in? This had to be something that we gave away for free because of who we are, because of what God has called us to be, and because of what the opportunity was that was ahead of us.
Yeah, and look at the impact, right, from that first decision, that first disruptive decision. And the impact is massive. Maybe you'll share that with us in a second. But you're also looking at now other ways to disrupt because you're seeing some opportunities.
Disruptions to us. Yeah,
you're seeing changes
absolutely.
in the world, and your readiness to adapt. Tell us a bit about first of all, the impact right now, so we have a sense of where it stands.
Yeah, so today we've had about 540 million downloads of the YouVersion Bible app in the last, 15 years, which is stunning. And yet when we have been living our lives in 2022 in the technology world, there's some disruption that has happened in the market. Google has historically taken the app ratings from the entire globe, averaged them together, and then used those as the way that they promote apps inside of the Google Play Store. But what they did about a year ago this time is they broke that out. And so all of the positive app ratings that we've had in the US that used to help buoy us in the app ratings, in the app stores in other countries around the world, those no longer help there. And so what we've discovered very quickly with a significant downturn of organic installs around the world is that we were struggling to actually deliver a product that was going to make a difference in the most technologically, the countries in which technology had yet to penetrate the most. And so we suddenly found ourselves losing ground to other books and reference apps in those app stores, which caused downloads of the app to fall off significantly. And we had to begin to say, all right, what are we going to do to be able to meet this need? And so to date, it's always been one app, one Bible app, the YouVersion app that we've developed. But in the middle of the summer, we made a decision to target an app directly for low-resourced languages in Africa, starting with English. We know that though there are many, many languages that we desperately want to deliver the Bible in, we can still see that the vast majority of the Bible engagement, even in those African countries, especially English-speaking African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Zimbabwe, Zambia, places like that, we targeted an app. We started from scratch, and in 8 weeks, a small lab of engineers from our team built from scratch a brand new, offline optimized, single language Bible included in the download thanks to the generosity of Biblica. The NIV is pre-bundled into that app. And we are seeing that app has now shot to the top of the App Store in all of those countries, seeing really incredible downloads. The most stunning thing is, as of yesterday, 70,000 people had downloaded this app, and 18,000 people opened it yesterday.
That's awesome.
Like a massive percentage of people who are downloading the app are engaging with it day in and day out, and we've discovered that this is going to be an experiment we continue. We're going to lean in, bring more languages, bring more resources, take it to more countries. We've disrupted our own processes, and so we're sitting here now with established methods of a Bible app that has had 540 million downloads and emerging technologies that we're going to continue to lean into that is just beginning to see what God's going to use through that.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And there's a principle here that's going to be coming across. You're going to keep hearing it, that this kind of generosity and gutsiness, it just inspires, So we love leaning into the next thing, And some of the first decisions are hard, for Biblica, for Tyndale, to say, hey, we're going to give you free our translation. Others in this room, we're going to give you free our translations for this work. But we share your heart. Like, we see the possibility of that. So thank you for what you and team are doing.
Thank you for letting us give a Bible away for free.
Yeah, well, don't stop. Hi. Hey. Jonathan, hope you know Jonathan, the great work of Faith Comes by Hearing. Years and years of just incredible work to make sure that God's word is heard, because faith comes by hearing, right? And hearing by the word of God. Thank you for decades of that work. You guys have decided to make some shifts, part of which is leaning in and engaging more with this movement. Tell us the story.
So the end of the story is about 3 years ago, we realigned the organization inside out, upside down, to realign with the All Access goals. Like, unapologetically, we're not even on the committee. Like, we went all in,
Yeah.
head first.
Where's your tattoo? I can't remember.
Not appropriate. Way to be awkward, Geof. But the backstory on that, and we want the All Access Goals, we want to arrive there together, and actually all the oral learners of the world to have an audio Bible and a Lumo film and oral Bible translation. So that's our heart. We're all in. The backstory on that, back in 2013, our oral Bible translation journey started with a messy one, and it was being a recipient of extravagant generosity. Back in those days, Greg Pruitt, Pioneer Bible Translators and Seed Company, showed up for a brainstorming meeting on what oral drafting was kind of called at the time could become. And we actually asked Greg Pruitt, I don't know if he's still here. Oh, there you are, Greg. We asked if we could borrow Greg Pruitt's personal and organizational reputation. Because OBT was such a risk, it was such an unknown thing, and he said yes. So Greg is not only a man of prayer, but he'll lend out his reputation. And so we were going to sink or swim together. And then Seed Company just showed up and just kept saying, generosity begets generosity. And they just kept saying it and living it out, and we started to believe that generosity begets generosity. So 5-6 years later, messy pilot projects, developing render software, experimentation with many of you in the room. We thought we were just going to be the software people. Like, stay in the background, serve, edit some audio files, and 2017 began to have these pricks on our heart to get involved in Bible translation directly. And we're just like the cassette people, right? Like the audio Bible people. It was a nerve-wracking and kind of chaotic season of wrestling through this as leadership, having leadership meetings and talking about, is the Lord calling us to this? Our highest value wanted to be obedience. We just wanted to obey. I actually Googled how to become a translation organization. I actually Googled that. And there's no book written on it. And when do you become one? Is it when you fund your first project? Is it when you bring a consultant on staff? There's like a gray line. So it was kind of a terrifying journey for us, and it kind of culminated in seeking the Lord, of course, and having a peace about it. But I called this guy and Dal Anderson a bunch and John Chestnut, and we asked the question, two questions. We asked the question, is there space in the Bible translation movement for faith comes by hearing, or should we just kind of be the audio Bible, Lumo proclaimer people? And all three men said essentially the exact same thing to us over that year of discernment in 2018. It was, not only is there space, but we need you. Talk about emerging players. We were a 47-year-old organization there. We were supposed to, have it all together, be confident. It was kind of terrifying to all of a sudden become an organization that does Bible translation and helps churches and church movements and church planning organizations do Bible translation. We're not qualified. Runs through your head a lot, like Gideon. But having these three men say, not only is there space, we need you, and we're going to actually help you become an organization that does oral Bible translation was just awesome. Yeah. And so as I reflect on that, I think of our passage, Philippians 2. Christ had all this influence, and he set his equality with God as not something to grasp. He left heaven. We now have influence. You have influence. We have all this influence in the room, and there are a lot of emerging players. I can relate. 3 years ago, knees were shaking. There's a lot of emerging players out there, like YWAM. Now we're partnering with Spoken Worldwide, Bilta, a church movement in Zambia. There are dozens and dozens of emerging players, and I think we can be radically generous like Greg was with our reputation, with taking some risk. And it may just be a kind word to these emerging players that helps them have the gall or the confidence to get involved. And we need them. There's not only space, we need dozens and dozens of other people who may be debating whether to get involved or feel super unqualified.
Yeah. Hey, and just to tie some things together, you heard from this platform what's going on in oral Bible translation. You heard there's 400 projects underway that we know of. There may be even more. Just tremendous growth in that area to meet tremendous need in that area for so many oral preference communities that want to engage with God's word in this format. And so I see the impact side of that from your disruptive, daring, bold decision, grateful for it. But say something, and you talked about knees do shake when you do it, but how's it affected your organization? How's it affected you to make the step to trust God in this way? What's been the inside look of your organization based on that?
So I think one of our highest values, probably most of us in the room, we desire to obey the Lord. So when we posture ourselves in a listening posture and say, Lord, speak to us and give us the courage to obey, he actually gives courage. He provides. And I think it's been neat for the staff to come in alignment with a vision that is not chest beating or kicking the door open, but a humble posture of, Lord, help us obey. It's been affirmed over and over by partnering with you all. It's been affirmed in so many ways that this is a grand adventure we're on, and when we obey, the Lord provides all of the needed. And even just all the talk of oral Bible translation just the past couple of days, like this is a special time to be alive. There's not, to sit between the NLT guy and the NIV guy and not sense any tension. Like,
yeah, I know.
This
I
is
know. He did sit way over there, though. I don't know what that's about yet. We're going to find out in just a second. No, because who doesn't want the hearts of generous women and men alongside for this journey, for this work? We are so grateful you're here. Speaking of you, Mr. Jeremy, hello, sir. So cool to hear that story. Really, I mean, so encouraging. I want to just pull back the curtain a little bit, because you talk about an incredible 3 generations, really, of generosity and disruption and just commitment, which is amazing, by the way. Just that's continued on and that you're carrying on that same passion. But take us back a little bit to make that decision to take these resources that are critical resources but have great marketplace and commercial value, to release them for free and I'm seeing Creative Commons applied there. Just can you open up that decision for us a little bit? How your organization, how you and your leadership team came to that decision?
I think we're in the process of moving from a sort of a scarcity mentality to an abundance mentality, and realizing that, the Lord owns the resources anyway. Yep. And if we're following in obedience to His will, then it shouldn't be a super difficult decision to decide to rely on His provision. So that's what we've been about that at Tyndale since the very beginning. Yeah. But when you're operating a business, and Tyndale has always been a for-profit company until 2019, when you're operating a business, you have to have a certain degree of scarcity mentality because you're operating in a competitive field. Well, we are making that shift now to more of an abundance mentality, just relying on the Lord's provision so that through us, He can bless others who need the resources that we have to offer. So it really, it wasn't a super difficult decision once we made that step.
Yeah, it's so consistent with your grandfather from the very foundings, from how you shared that story, and thank you again for sharing it, from the beginning, there was a clear commitment for what this is about. And it's the same thing we all have. We all have a mission story similar to that, in the sense of our organizations or our own calling to serve in this space. It's the same desire that this word, this hope of the gospel, would reach new people in new ways. And so what can we do? How do we open up our hands and our assets to make that possible? I mean, Biblica has a story similar. It goes back decades before this, 213 years of hoping and opening God's word. And in this last season, we've done the similar kinds of things. We just committed ourselves to try to pursue we call it radical generosity. What is that? That's what God has expressed to each of us. Our commitment to pursue what we see Him doing in the free gift that He's given us in His word and so on. And so it was natural for us to say yes to YouVersion, even though it was a long conversation. I won't kid you. Because we had already been beneficiaries. We were benefits, by the way. Do you know that in some decades back, Biblica deeply benefited from Tyndale's gift to us in opening up some of their international translations, and we partnered together in the release of those and continue to. So the stories of what God has done, what He's made available, and how we in this generation can then respond to that is what we're talking about here. Let me do kind of a free-for-all round play here of, hey, there's folks listening to your stories are encouraged by them, and they're thankful you're sharing them. But they have different decisions to make. They're in specific contexts of ministry and mission, and they might see an opportunity that they haven't tried before. Maybe it's never been tried before. What would you say to our friends listening of, hey, encouragement or coaching? What's the word that you could offer them to help them make a decision that would dare the disruption that might be for a greater kingdom purpose? From your own stories, what would you encourage? How would you coach?
I would encourage collaboration. I feel like collaboration is sort of the theme of the year for 2022 and coming just to the end of the calendar year. But you think back to 2020 when every organization, every business, every church in the world had to deal with the same unexpected issue at the same time. And the buzzword of 2020 turned out to be pivot, as everyone started figuring out new ways of operating in a radically different world. If the buzzword of 2021 then was recovery, as we were coming out of COVID and finding ways to get back to normal, now moving forward, I think it's collaboration. I think it's organizations finding new ways to work with each other for the benefit of others, not for the benefit of just themselves. So the collaboration between Tyndale and Biblica, between Tyndale House Foundation and Faith Comes by Hearing, between the NLT and the NIV, between YouVersion and other Bible apps and other Bible translation organizations working together to benefit the global church for God's glory. If you are facing a difficult decision as an organization, find somebody to work together with you in collaboration toward a common goal.
Yeah, good.
So you've got the word collaboration. The one that comes to my mind is iteration. And there are moments when you don't have to start like all in, but you can find a place to make a small change and then look for the evidence that God is blessing that and then do another iteration of it. And that's something that we're trying to move fast. We're trying to move with speed in everything that we do right now. We're talking about it consistently with our team, trying to find small wins that we can see evidence and see proof that there's something there, and then just make iterative changes over time. There's going to come a time when you need to go all in. You need to make a radical choice to open up a whole new something, but there are moments also that you can start with iteration. So collaboration, iteration, you're up, bro.
Wow.
Texas pecans. I'll just share a story. So our dark days were 2016 when we were kind of saying to ourselves, what the heck are we doing? What is this OBT stuff? Is it the right timing? And collaboration, we surrounded ourselves with people who were encouragers and scooped us up when we were low. And there were dark self-doubt days in 2016. Seed Company gave a donation of $60,000 that meant the world to us. We were struggling on every front to try to figure out what our role in OBT was. And they also came with Texas pecans and passed a handful of Texas pecans out to every one of our software developers and said, we see you, we see your struggle, and we're on your team. And so when you're doing these wild experiments or trying new things, seek the Lord, have the courage to obey his voice. But man, it helps to have friends along the journey to encourage you when you're low. And you probably will be low at certain times.
Yeah. I will add to that. It's uncertain. It's disruption. Means you're entering into a place you've never been before. Maybe no one's been there before. You can see a reason to do it, but it's gonna be scary. I don't want to take that away. But think about what we do together. Think about the value, the importance of what we are seeking to accomplish, why we are working hard on interlocking, but much more importantly, why we're so deeply committed to opening up the hope of the gospel. We sang this morning the song, the Hymn of Heaven song, right? It's the passion of every person in this room that there would be every person able to sing that hymn of heaven. Be there with us. Be there with us in this company of God's faithful people. Every tribe, every nation. That's what it's about. And I know in our own little biblical story, man, we made some choices that were scary at the time. To kind of step away from known revenue, to move into openness, to move into Creative Commons and say, gosh, I can see challenges for that, but I can just see so much benefit for the kingdom of God to step out in these ways. And we didn't know that there would be significant growth to follow. We only knew at that moment that it was the next right thing to do, and we really wanted to do the next right thing. What I'm hearing in the stories here is leaders and organizations who prayed to do the next right thing because it was really important that they do so. So I guess I'm going to speak for these guys to you guys, just so grateful for you guys that you were willing to do that. I'm going to give us a close in just a second, but it looks like you have one more thing to say, Geof, so I'll let you say it.
Well, I was just reflecting as you say that when we take those steps of faith and we trust in where the Lord might be prompting us to, the outcome we can always think about as being worship and praise in the hearts of other folks who might receive a translation or might receive a blessing of a Bible. But how much more are our own hearts in gratitude, full of praise for a God who came, and in the moment of our indecision and difficulty, when we trust, our own worship of our Father grows as well. And the stories that we can tell bubble up to praise in ways because of those decisions and the faith that it takes, in ways that it wouldn't if we had relied on bottom lines or established methods. And so it increases our own worship as well.
Yeah, that's a story I'm seeing God write over and over again. And so, sisters, brothers, friends here, heroic disruption. We need some more heroic disruptors. Please join us, continue to join us in this work. Would you actually join me in thanking our friends here for being on our panel today? Thanks so much, guys. That's it.